First, I want to say, Michael, because I do so much with music, I just want to acknowledge how beautiful it is to have him here every single weekend, putting in that time. So, like, that can't be, stated enough. The title of my sermon today is called Rooted in Principle, Resonant with Sound. And my synopsis read, Icehouse Radio as a ministry of music, culture, connection, and liberation, a reflection on grassroots radio and Unitarian Universalist spiritual practice. As a sort of preamble for this, I wanted to say that at the heart of Unitarian Universalism lies a radical and beautiful claim that every person, regardless of race, age, gender, background, or belief, holds inherent worth and dignity. It is the Unitarian Universalist first principle. This is not a passive belief, but a principle that asks us to reshape the spaces we build and the communities that we grow. Coupled with the Unitarian Universalist sixth principle, the vision of a world community built on peace, liberty, and justice for all, these values call us into a deeper relationship with those whose voices have too often been silenced or excluded. They challenge us to consider not only who we are, but who we are willing to become in community with others. I decided to read that statement because it is a good primer for today's talk. Good morning, everyone. Beautiful people, welcome to this sanctuary, this Unitarian Fellowship of Houston. Welcome to this sacred, secular space, words that don't inherently seem to go together, but like the Rothko Chapel in Montrose, I feel represent a different kind of spirituality, a place of refuge from the cacophony of our busy worlds, a place I feel comfortable, a place to seek and be still. I've circled back here to this sanctuary consistently over the last 2 years. This airy, acoustically resonant sacred fishbowl, as you can see, is not just a building for me. It holds the memory of my father who sat here, listened here, sang here, and believed in this fellowship. My brother also sat here, and we mourned together, celebrated life together here in this sanctuary. My father's death anniversary falls on August 28th, and so today's reflection is both personal and collective. It is, in a sense, a conversation about the world we're living in now and the world we're building together, one act of listening at a time. And why do I frame it like this? One act of listening at a time. Well, that comes in part because of my connection to Pauline Oliveros, the Houston-born Tejana composer, accordionist, also like Flaco Jimenez, accordionist, a pioneering figure in post-World War II experimental and electronic music. Best known for founding the San Francisco Tape Music Center, she also developed the philosophic concepts of deep listening and sonic awareness. She's influenced me a great deal in the way I conduct my life, and there are local musicians that have championed the idea of deep listening with very direct connections to Pauline herself. And I happen, thank goodness, to have one in the audience, Sonia Flores, who's in the back. Appreciate the gifts that she brings in her understanding of Pauline Oliveros' mission. I very much internalized this idea of deep listening and will make reference, whether explicitly or more subtly, throughout the sermon. Quote, as a musician, I'm interested in the sensual nature of sound, its power of synchronization, coordination, release, and change. She wrote, hearing represents the primary sense organ. Hearing happens involuntarily, but listening is a voluntary process, and through training and experience, produces culture. She also wrote that all cultures develop through ways of listening, and that deep listening is listening in every possible way to whatever is around us, whatever is possible for our ears to hear, no matter what you're doing. Such intense listening includes the, quote, sounds of daily life, or one's own thoughts, as well as musical sounds. Deep listening represents a heightened state of awareness and connects us to all that there is. I hope that this ignites a curiosity to dig deeper into her philosophies and body of work. You won't be sorry. As a Houstonian, she also helps pivot us back to the concerns of this city, and for me, learning new ways to hear the world around us, a world Pauline may have actually physically inhabited here at one point. Backing up a bit, a little personal context to bring me to the present. I spent nearly 18 years out of the country, most of these years in Beirut, Lebanon. I can say with honesty that moving back to Houston wasn't in the futures that I conceived for myself. Coming back to the city I was born and raised in, it wasn't just a return to a geographic location, it was a return to responsibility, to legacy, and to a new chapter in my life that I didn't fully see coming, but one that I feel I was destined to embrace. You see, the last 3 years since my return have been difficult. I've had to reinvent myself in nearly every possible way. I had to reintroduce myself to the United States government and the systems of consumerism that are such defining factors to life here. I had to find brand new income streams. I had to apply for a new passport. I had to reinsert myself into a taxation process I had avoided for 18 years, not contributing to wars or misguided U.S. foreign policy directives like the Israeli genocide of Palestinians in Gaza the U.S. government has supported for the last 2 years. I had to get a new driver's license, a new bank account. I had to capitulate to the credit rating system once again. These were things I did not miss. These were the cacophonous things in my life. Some of my analysis of what was broken about the USA was seen through the lens of caretaking for my father, but contributing to this was my culture shock at being re-immersed into a capitalist reality like the United States, a reality fraught in what seems like a 24/7 psychological operation meant to humiliate us and atomize our existences. It's certainly a system that inundates us with sounds, horrible sounds, that pull us away from our personal connections with each other. And while it is true that I came back to care for my father in his final years, my journey has become less about lamenting the U.S. system and instead has firmly rooted itself in the ultimate resistance, the act of listening, deep listening, with love as the guide, and through an internet radio station and a ministry that binds my worldview currently. More on Ice House Radio in a moment. I also had to learn to listen to my father's stories during the 2 years I cared for him. His silences, listening to issues that put us at arm's length for decades, and I had to learn to let them pass like a note discreetly played from an instrument or the sounds of a fleeting radio broadcast that I forgot to record onto cassette tape in my formative years. Like a breath, our traumas and attachments come and go. All of these realizations urged me to think about what I was going to say today. And the truth is, imposter syndrome is real. But I say with confidence, we're at a pivotal moment, and as individuals, as a congregation, as a city, as a state, and as a nation within the international community. For me, returning to the first principle of Unitarian Universalism, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the sixth principle, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, these are guideposts that take courage and assistance and light the way forward. And they beckon us to listen deeply, clocking the external noises, diverse voices, and internal discussions that help our communities, families, and friends see ways of imagining new futures. Like Houston itself, this particular fellowship is porous. It absorbs influences, welcomes strangers, allows new ideas to seep in and mingle with the old. It is a place of hospitality, and it is here that I've been encouraged to try out ideas for building up public engagement. Here I've been able to make room for the unexpected, and if my friends and chosen family gathered here today see the possibilities, this is a place where we could all plant seeds to see grow in unexpected ways. This sermon is such a moment. These are puzzle pieces to figure out ways to entwine worlds that are disparate and separated, but not on purpose. In both the fellowship and in Houston, right here in this sanctuary, there is an energy that comes from listening, from being in conversation with the world, not to prescribe what should be, but to notice what is and to celebrate the life that emerges. In this spirit, I weave into this tale Ice House Radio that formed with a dear friend and comrade, chosen family, in fact, of 23 years, Sean Bradley, who is sadly absent today. I'm sending him love. He moved back in October of 2023 with his now wife, Cassie, and it was his dad, Dwayne Bradley, former general manager of KPFT 91.1 FM Pacifica, who was the first Bradley I met, as I helped to form the news department at KPFT with Renee Feltz in 2001. Fast forwarding nearly a quarter century, the son, the father, and the burgeoning music community make up this remarkable internet radio station. It wasn't so long ago that we converted a Sprinter van into a modern pirate radio lab. Our first actual broadcast was in Sean and Cassie's backyard on December 7th, 2023. We pulled out the van, set up the turntables and speakers, patched into their Wi-Fi, and some 50 people showed up from our friends group and from the neighborhood in the Second Ward. We knew we had something that was immediately about contributions of others and not about Sean or myself. January 7th was the first official broadcast, and since then, Ice House Radio has managed to broadcast every weekend without fail. To date, we've managed more than 1,300 radio broadcasts. Hell yeah. We have also managed to inhabit 2 brick-and-mortar spaces in that time, and while Ice House Radio is still in its infancy, it is quickly becoming a sanctuary of sound, connection, and cultural relevance in the city of Houston. Ice House Radio is also an experiment in listening, the kind of deep listening that I believe our fellowship also aspires to, which brings these 2 influences in my life and communities I spend time with and in together in a very real sense here today. It's a kind of spiritual frequency I want to encourage. Digging into the radio station at the heart of Ice House Radio is a simple but radical idea: sound as a meeting place. Music is the easy way to categorize the appeal. The best music the city has to offer because it comes from the record music collecting passions of all the DJs, producers, and musicians that have gravitated to our internet radio experiment. At Ice House Radio, we encourage the messy, raw, unfiltered voices of people who are often unheard. We tell our DJs to think of their radio shows as wholly of their own making, explaining that we want bedroom sets, music that likely won't make their public-facing DJ club sets, where dance floors take up more weight in their music choices. Ice House Radio is a chance to be more vulnerable sonically. The punk, do-it-yourself, underground hip-hop ethos, the pirate radio attitude of broadcasting whenever, wherever, however, is in keeping with this philosophy inhabiting alternative spaces, sonically and physically, that we see Ice House Radio's brick-and-mortar space since last October is located in a reclaimed car wash in Montrose, giving the feeling of a living room hi-fi setup, replete with a 1972 Japanese Sansui floor speakers and a large Persian rug, and a bar setup that could be in Beirut as easy as it is in the unzoned city of Houston. I think of the spaces Ice House Radio has inhabited and broadcast from: the back of our Sprinter van holed up in the parking lots of community centers, artist residences, restaurants, and back alleys. We've broadcasted from block parties, local breweries, the Shape Community Center in the 3rd Ward. Quick aside, Shape underwent a fire this past year and is still rebuilding and could use our help. We've posted up on our broadcast kit in nearly every major and off-kilter arts organization in the city: the Art League of Houston, Contemporary Arts Museum, Lawndale Art Center, Glassell's School of Art, Museum of Fine Arts, the Manila Collection. We've broadcasted from burger stands like Boo's Burgers in the 2nd Ward and a Second Cup on the north side that helps fight against human trafficking. We've helped broadcast the story of U.S. political prisoners, raised money to send to families living the horrors of genocide in Gaza, and created agitprop against ICE. You'll find any number of political affiliations within our DJ ranks, all gathering in the confines of an Ice House Radio broadcast. We wanted a place where community could flow in and out without needing a sense of the mainstream boundaries. And so what happens at Ice House Radio is not scripted, it's porous, it's improvisational, it's a mix of voices who have been excluded from the mainstream cultural conversation, not as guests, or special features, but as the center of the dialogue. Sometimes that dialogue takes the form of a bass line you feel in your rib cage, or a synth that emerges from a hint of electronic sampling. Sometimes it's a story between songs. Sometimes it's silence between friends or strangers that feels like music. And like this fellowship, Icehouse Radio is not a finished product. It is still forming, still learning, still stumbling into moments of unexpected beauty. Its spirit remains experimental, an ongoing search for the right questions, not the final answers. For me, the connection between this fellowship and Icehouse Radio was clear. Both are invitations to tune in, to practice that Pauline Oliveros kind of listening that doesn't just collect sound, but allows it to reshape you. In a city as sprawling and polyphonic as Houston, we need more spaces and places, physical or virtual, where listening isn't just a courtesy, but the main act. When I think about what both this fellowship and Icehouse Radio have taught me, I keep coming back to the image of a dial on an old-fashioned radio or shortwave band radio, the kind you have to turn slowly, carefully, waiting for the static to fade just enough so you can hear what's coming through. You can't rush it. You can't just jab a preset button. You have to move with patience, with care, and with an openness to what might arrive. That's what deep listening feels like to me. And that's what I believe our spiritual practice inside and outside these walls calls us to. Here's the thing. When you turn the dial, you don't always land on what you expect. Sometimes you find something that challenges you. Sometimes you stumble into a fragment of beauty. Sometimes you sit in the static for a while before the signal clears. And all of it, is part of the practice. Pauline Oliveros said that deep listening represents a heightened state of awareness and connects us to all that there is. That's not just a poetic turn of phrase. It's an invitation to recognize that our connections are already here, braided into the air we breathe and the sounds that move through us, if we only choose to notice them. In a noisy world, that choice is radical. In a divided world, it is healing. And in a world that often wants us to turn away from each other, it's an act of resistance. This fellowship is one of the few places I know where that kind of listening is not only possible, it's built into the architecture. Not just the architecture of the building, but the architecture of our relationships and the 7 principles that bind this fellowship here and nationally. We're not here to flatten differences or erase dissonance. We're here to let these factors teach us how to hear more fully. The same is true at Icehouse Radio. You might tune in one Tuesday or Thursday night to a DJ spinning ambient textures you've never encountered before. The next week, it might be a block of experimental hip-hop or a specific kind of cumbia, outlaw country, or bounce. It could be a scratchy vinyl record or a protest from decades ago, or even London pirate radio advertisements. You might not like what you're hearing, but that's not the point. The point is that you've entered into a space of possibility where what you like is now being informed by something new. You've stepped into a conversation in progress. And conversation, whether in music or in community, requires trust. Trust that if I bring my voice, my sound, my story, it will be received without immediate judgment. Trust that we can hold space for each other's truths, even when they vibrate at frequencies unfamiliar to us. Trust that the silence between words or songs can be just as sacred as the sound itself. It's not always easy. The temptation, especially in our polarized times, is to curate our lives so tightly that we never have to encounter anything unexpected. That is a condition I find myself considering every day as the cacophony of conformity constricts our imagination here in the U.S. We can constrict ourselves with our media, with our neighborhoods, even with our faith. But when we only listen to what we already agree with, we only surround ourselves with the familiar. We shrink the scope of our own humanity. Unitarian Universalism at its best refuses that smallness. It says, bring your whole self, bring your questions, bring your contradictions, And let's meet each other there. That's the same ethic I believe Ice House Radio embodies. Not a narrow playlist of what's already popular, never the corporate option, but a wide open space where the unknown can enter and change us. And here's the truth. Both here in this fellowship, in our little reclaimed car wash in Montrose, or in the back of our Sprinter van, the magic doesn't come from the equipment or the technology alone. It comes from the people, from the willingness of human beings to sit together in the mess of life, to make something in the moment and to say, I'm here, I'm listening, and I'm with you. That's not just community, that's communion. When I think of my father, whose presence still echoes in this room, I think about the ways he taught me to listen, sometimes in words, sometimes in silences, not always easy. And I think about how those lessons are still unfolding. The older I get, the more I understand that the work of listening is never done. It's something we have to recommit to day after day, relationship after relationship, broadcast after broadcast. So as I close, I want to invite us, all of us, to imagine ourselves as both transmitters and receivers. Every day, in every interaction, we are sending out signals in our tone, in our body language, and the way we show up for each other. And every day we are receiving signals, sometimes loud and clear, sometimes barely perceptible. The more we attune ourselves to those frequencies, the more we can live into embodying what Unitarians call the first and sixth principles, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and working toward a world community of peace, liberty, and justice for all. We don't have to wait for a perfect world to practice that. In this sense, I'm more of an anarchist. I don't need to wait for permission to enter into these changes. We can practice it now in the messy, unpredictable music of real life. We can practice it in our conversations after service, in the way we greet a stranger, and the way we listen to the news, and the way we choose to spend our weekday nights, maybe even tune into a little pirate radio station somewhere in Houston. And maybe, just maybe, if we keep listening like that, if we keep showing up for each other in that way, we'll start to hear a new kind of signal coming through the static, one that sounds a little more like love, a little like freedom, and a lot like the world we can imagine together if we are listening. And maybe remember that every act of listening, truly listening, is also an act of future creation. So, thank you for listening.